It's one of the most controversial topics in modern wellness. Millions of people swear by homeopathy. Many doctors, though, call it pseudoscience. And yet the global homeopathy market is worth over 16 billion and is still growing. So what's going on here? Why is there such a divide between believers and skeptics? And what might this tell us about both the healthcare system and how people make health decisions? To help us wrestle with that question and others, we are joined by Catherine Niemiec. She's an integrative health practitioner, and she's a returning guest here on WellWave Now. Brings decades of experience bridging traditional and alternative approaches. So, Catherine, before we get into this debate, let's start with the basics. When people hear the word homeopathy, what should they actually understand?
Well, what they need to know is that it's a real valid medicine, and it was part of our American culture in the early centuries, and it is used around the world. There are colleges and hospitals, and some of the original hospitals in the United States were homeopathic medical hospitals until the AMA and the drug companies were formed, and they wanted to sell their stuff. And homeopathy was very affordable and effective. It just didn't deal with things like surgery and so forth, but they were very good hospitals for healing people. And so we have colleges now still in the United States. We have one here in Arizona, and the American Medical College of Homeopathy is one of the first in the nation. Right now, one of the oldest. But let me just say this. Homeopathy is a system of medicine developed over 200 years ago by a German physician, and it's based on two core principles. Well, the first is like cures like. And for some people, they know that like attracts like now. That's a common theme. But like cures like. And so the idea is that a substance that causes the symptoms in a healthy person to experience illness is being used in a very diluted dose to heal those same symptoms.
Okay, great. So you want us to understand the basics here. One for homeopathy to think about when people hear it, that like cures like, and it's been around for a while. So I want to thank everyone for joining us, and I want to remind you, you are watching WellWave Now, and this is where timeless wisdom meets modern insight to help you live better and hopefully for long.
So welcome back to the program, Catherine. It's great to have you here again. And we kind of got into a little bit of the basics of what is homeopathy, but where does the controversy come in? Let's find out more about the history of where it came from and why it's so controversial today. And I think, Tim, you've got a little bit of the history on this, right?
Let's go through it a little bit, Catherine, because you dived into history, you talked about it. And just as you said, it started in the late 18th century with a guy named Samuel Heinemann, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it's just what you said, that like cures like, and the use of ultra diluted substances. So it's spread worldwide, and I want people to still understand it's integrated to the national health systems in some countries.
Yes.
Okay, so
I want to say that the only statue of a physician at the U.S. Capitol is that of Dr. Hahnemann. So it just goes to show how prevalent this medicine was in the United States. And it's still lingering and making a comeback. Arizona is one of the first states to relicense that medicine. So there are doctors of homeopathy in Arizona.
Catherine, I found it really interesting that you talk about the history and the fact that it was very prevalent in the United States. And, to me, when something is prevalent in terms of health and healing, it's the real deal. That's what I want people to know. Like something sticks around and helps people, it's the real deal. And so it was squashed and, the mainstream, our current mainstream medical system tried to eliminate it, and to no avail. So that's one point. But you also talked about the early history and how it was used before pharmaceuticals came into use. What were some of the conditions that you were aware of that were helped and healed by homeopathy in these hospitals?
Well, just about anything. Chronic diseases, colds, flus. It was very effective for pandemics. When the Spanish flu came, those who had homeopathy did fine. And I do want to attest that during COVID, our homeopathic medicines performed admirably, almost stopping symptoms instantly.
And can I ask another question? Because you brought up COVID. What I'd like to know is, what they call long COVID or these long-term symptoms. Are you aware of homeopathy helping those people who have what we call long COVID or sustained
Yes.
symptoms that can help?
Yes. So homeopathy as a practice or a medicine is divided into acute conditions and constitutional conditions. So when you see a homeopathic practitioner or physician, if they've had the full training, they can look at every single symptom, every single mindset, and be able to analyze what has caused it and unwind the illness to balance, if that makes sense. So if you see that practitioner, you might have several sessions going very deeply into your psyche and your health. And each remedy that they give you at that stage takes you to the next level towards health, and your whole life changes. It's very amazing. But what I like about the acute conditions and prescribing is that if you find the right remedy, the symptoms go away instantly. And so it's very, very amazing. I have some stories to tell you.
So we'll dive, want to get to those stories. And I guess you're going to get to a little bit one now because you made that bold statement, Catherine, that during COVID, that the homeopathic one, people did great. So what were they given? What was the homeopathic approach to COVID?
Well, homeopathy, like herbs, I also have a Chinese herbal medicine background. We treat what we see. We treat the symptoms. And so many of the current remedies that are out there, and I'm going to show you one of these things. Have you ever been to the store and see these little blue tubes? Okay.
Yep.
So what this medicine deals with is the other principle, which is the minimum dose. So basically, they take what causes the illness and they dilute it to 1,000ths and more different strengths of a dilution. And they put it on a little sugar pill. You put it under your tongue and it contacts your body, communicates with your body that way. Okay. It's a nanoparticle dose and your body responds and listens to it and stops producing the symptoms. Okay. So the remedies that we use during COVID are many of the common ones that are on the shelf already. And the FDA approves most of these medicines, okay, that are on the shelf, but there's many more types of these medicines for all kinds of things. But the ones that are over the counter can be used and combined to address this. So I won't go into the details about which one, but we can create some. My favorite for COVID was arsenicum. Okay, that deals with like food poisoning and so forth. A lot of people had all this dampness in their body, and it's the one thing that helps deal with that.
Okay. All right. Before your question, Bob, there, because Catherine mentioned, I want to lay some more foundational stuff for the audience here. And you mentioned you're also into herbal medicine. I think that's a good point to bring up. So how does homeopathy differ from herbal medicine and other natural approaches?
Herbal medicine deals primarily with plants and other substances like minerals and, strange little animal things and whatever. But actually, homeopathy uses a lot of those same substances. We've compared, and many of them are very similar. But you could take almost anything, even the saliva of somebody, and turn that into a medicine. Okay, that's different than plant herbology. Okay, so homeopathy is broader. It's not just limited to plants.
Okay. And now we heard that, should we equate a naturopath with a practitioner of homeopathy?
Well, they can be one and the same. A naturopath learns Western medicine and learns a couple hundred hours of Chinese medicine and of homeopathy. And some of them go on to study even more and become specialists. But naturopaths are the generalists of the holistic world, and they can tell you what combination or what kinds of medicines that would be helpful for you.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
What parts of the country or the world are more widely accepted to homeopathy, and why is it continuing to grow globally, in your opinion?
He has a very strong homeopathic medical system there. They have many colleges. Some of the doctors that come from there come to the United States, but they are very strong. But in Europe, France, Germany, and in the UK, and then also in South America, especially Brazil and Argentina use a lot of homeopathy.
There's a wide range of things that affect people. And so who would you really say the typical users are the typical scope for for your homeopathy? For example, and so you start to go into it, the flus and things of that nature. Let's go down that path. Would you use it? Can it be used to treat arthritis? You say could help the constitution, but where do you find a little bit of arthritis to give people to have them fight it off? So what are the typical users, and what's the scope of where you see homeopathy really being relevant?
Okay, so typical user, and I do not want to offend you gentlemen, but it is the women who seem to look at this first. They're the mothers. They take care of their families. And so they are always being resourceful and looking for solutions. So they're the largest group, mothers actually. But anyone who's had a health issue and they know how to research, and a lot of seniors, they start to look because when you go to the store, the health food store, the grocery, you'll see a homeopathy section. And if you go there, one of the companies, Boyron, who makes these tubes, provide these little booklets there so you can grab something and take a look and start learning. There are a lot of online courses. We offer some, and you can gradually get more and more aware. So that was the first of your two-part question. The other part was, I forgot.
Use the scope of conditions or things you think homeopathy really applies to.
Well, just about everything.
Yes, I agree.
It's everything, really. You can find us.
Now, Catherine, give me that. So, one of my favorite topics is arthritis because I've athletic injuries with some osteo has hit into it. So, how would you apply homeopathy to osteoarthritis?
Okay. So depending, sorry, that's my lawyer training in the background, depending on what type of arthritis, because arthritis in Chinese medicine is dampness that gets stuck in there, and then it's either hot or cold. So there are remedies that deal with that type of condition and injury. So, and it might be a combination formula of several of those. So, that would help. But then you have a constitutional issue because if you have to train up to go, this comes from other things though, not just this. Okay. There's an emotional component and a deterioration component in the body that they work with.
But why wouldn't that be Ayurvedic or Chinese medicine? Why wouldn't that be herbal medicine? What makes the approach homeopathy to
Well, it's
osteoarthritis?
cultural, okay? Because if you're in India, they have Ayurvedic medicine, which is a lot of food and diet and body work. And homeopathy is really a science before its time. I call it the original nanoparticle medicine.
Okay.
And actually, recent research now is proving that it is nanoparticle medicine.
And so, I'm just a small town boy. So, nanoparticle medicine. What is nanoparticle medicine, Ken?
Well, nanoparticles. So they did a 2015 study on one of the remedies called gelsemium, which is a flower, and that's used for the flu or shock. Because when you get shocked, like someone dies or something, you're in shock, you start to feel like you have the flu. So that remedy will work for that as well. So they did the study on this, and they found that there was a high dilution, highly diluted, it contained nanoparticles. And again, that is a communication stream to the body because our body communicates with nanoparticles. It's a messenger.
For our listeners, homeopathy takes the original substance, whatever it is, in its highest concentration that they use, and they almost infinitely dilute it over and over and over again to the point where there's almost zero detectable substance of the original solution or compound. And so some people say homeopathy is simply the energy of the original solution. That's it's one solution factor. Go ahead.
So what's the energy? So I can understand that if I have a peanut allergy, I know the energy of the peanut that could put against it. The flu, although Dr. Bob tells me I can't see viruses, although I did. So I went out and looked and saw the electron microscope these days can spot a virus. For a virus, I can understand, I got a little bit of virus exposed me to. Give me something similar, like they first found the people that were dealing with cowpox, they can get smallpox, that kind of a home. But when you tell me osteoarthritis, what's the energy from osteoarthritis that I'm I'm diluting to introduce back into my body to help fight it. That's where I'm lost a little bit, Catherine, on when we talk about the scope of these.
So it may not just be the virus. And by the way, cancer they're finding is a virus or a parasite even. So, okay, so it may not be the substance, but that your cancer or your arthritis is particularly responding to. A lot of the treatments also deal with the inflammation that comes from arthritis. And so there are remedies that can deal with that inflammation and reduce that. So it just depends.
Yeah, when you look at arthritis, in my opinion, you could think of arthritis pain, certain kinds of arthritis, as edema, swelling, pressure, fluid pressure, causing discomfort in the joint. So when people are overweight, carrying excess fluid, edema, different parts of the body, or the body is reacting to some kind of mutagenic stimulation or let's say hyperactivity system, the fluid retention happens in the joints. That can be extremely painful. And I believe, I don't know a ton of homeopathy, but I'm a real believer in it because I've helped thousands of people and interacted with thousands of people in terms of treatment for all kinds of conditions. Homeopathy is never a placebo effect because the people who turn to homeopathy typically are just saying, okay, I'll finally try that, you know, and because they think they've tried everything else. And then they get the homeopathy and it like so quickly causes an incredible help to assistance to their and relieving of symptoms. So, there's no placebo effect there. And now they have studies showing, clinical studies showing the benefits. I want our listeners to know that, forget placebo when you talk about homeopathy. It's the real deal.
All right, so we may come back to this. But I don't want to be like a dog on a bone here on this one, but we may come back to it because I'm still not there on that. Well, I'm still not there on the fact that we're taking a homeopathic or whatever you want to call it
Remedy.
approach, the right word to that osteo. If you say it's inflammation, you can treat. There are herbs that treat that. There are other things that treat that on inflammation. But where's the like for like? And maybe it just be that we're giving people a basic understanding of homeopathy here, and it may be a broader understanding of homeopathy that talks to that portion. But that's we'll table this one, Catherine, because I don't want you to get too upset with me here. But so we talk about India's big user of this. France. So you've got the South Asians, you've got Europeans, and you've got others that are doing this. And what do you think the roadblock is in the United States? Why do you think people in the United States, a broad spectrum of people in the United States, and me included until you open my eyes a little bit, see this as Old West snake oil medicine? So what's the roadblock in the U.S.?
Well, the main roadblock is the way that Western medicine looks at the body and with remedies and energy. They can't imagine that something that's so diluted would have an impact. Okay, that's a quantum effect, and they aren't into quantum physics the way they're into mainstream physics. So quantum medicine is very different. They acknowledge if they can't see it work or take it apart and look at it, it's a placebo then. And they think, oh, it's an energy medicine, not a chemical one. But research is now showing nanostructures. We now have the technology to see that homeopathy works. But back then, they just knew that a little bit of something healed that person. So,
Yeah, you made my point, Catherine, by talking about how a lot of experts in Western medicine are looking at the dilution and saying there's no active molecule there. And, experts that might even, I'm using air quotes, call it, quack medicine, right? But then you've got millions of patients on the other side that are experiencing benefits. They're using homeopathy along with their conventional medicine or in place of it. So you made a good point that Western medicine isn't looking at that nano ability to affect the body or outcome, because if we can't see it, it must not exist.
yeah. And the placebo effect goes away when you see that children respond to it and animals and even plants. They tested on plants.
Yeah, so along those paths, you say tested on point to some more things that people can take a look at in terms of studies, like working with plants, other types of research that's gone on that sort of lends credibility to the homeopathic approach.
Yes, yes. Well, there's all kinds of research on both sides because each side is trying to prove each other wrong and that they're right. And the thing about this medicine, depending on if it's used for acute or constitutional, is that it's a very personalized medicine. And that also makes it very attractive because here you have a practitioner who's listening to you intently on not just all your physical symptoms, but how you're feeling and your history and your emotions. So the remedy is very personalized to that. And that's an amazing thing for that because who is willing, what doctors has the time or energy to listen to that? But this is a different type of practitioner. They're skilled in observing that information and gaining that information. Versus acute, there's enough training to know this heals this right away. And so we'll work at that. We're not going to heal your psyche and your life, but we'll heal this issue right now. Yes. Well, I would definitely talk about the 2015 study about gelsemium, one of the remedies that is generally used for headaches and fever and chills, but also certain kinds of fears. And then if it gets into the constitution, it's so fascinating because these same remedies, when going to deeper dilutions, they work on the constitution, whereas the minimally diluted works on all the acute symptoms. But if you go into the constitution, they dilute it even more and it goes deeper. And so the gelsemium type of person might have a weak or dull constitution. They might feel a little cowardly. Their nerves are strained. So it's a whole different thing. But that study in 2015 showed there was a high dilution of nanoparticles as they tested that. But there's all kinds of studies, as you know, you can look for it on the web.
So, Catherine, it seems like the debate is really emotionally charged, right? Rather than evidence driven. Why is that? Why is it so emotional to people?
Well, it's a bit of a territorial thing about truth. Keep in mind that this medicine in the United States was the medicine that was in the hospitals. These doctors were trained to take care of people, and homeopathy was their main way of looking at things. And when in the 1930s, there's something called the Flexner Report, which the American Medical Association was just forming, and they wanted to get rid of these hospitals and go more into surgical places and different approach. And there's a place for that. But these homeopathic hospitals and schools couldn't meet the muster of the standards that they set to essentially push them out of business. Because this medicine is so affordable, it doesn't take much to make a duplicate remedy. But the oil industry helped create, the petroleum industry helped create the pharmaceutical industry. And a lot of those drugs, early drugs, were petroleum based. They could charge a lot more money for that. And if people were not getting well as fast, they could make a living off of them. Whereas in homeopathy, they would get well. And so the classic example is the pandemic, the Spanish flu. The people who had that got well quite quickly. And so there's evidence around that. There's some research on that and historical evidence. So currently, I think there's some resistance for Western medicine to accept it. But now that it's getting proven scientifically, they might have to look at it. And again, there's a area for a war for who owns the patient and who owns the remedy, the healing. That's a tough thing. And are we in charge of our own health? That's another issue. And who's in charge of saying what's real evidence versus not?
Are there clinical studies that have shown that during the pandemic, a recent pandemic with COVID, that people who were given homeopathy did well?
I don't think there are any studies that were being done during COVID, honestly. I mean, we can collect some data, but there's much more from the clinics and the practitioners who could see what was happening. And I can vouch at our clinic that those homeopathic remedies, if you took them right away, it stopped the symptoms. Now, there are other substances that did that as well. I'm a big fan of oregano oil, knock something out right away, and ivermectin. And the president recommended hydrochloroquine, and people thought that was crazy. But quinine dries dampness, and that's what COVID was, a lot of dampness in the body. Same thing that ivermectin does, it drains the dampness.
Okay. All right. So before we move on to another section here, let's continue to bring it down to that ground level. So you've worked with patients, in your clinic there. You've worked with a practitioner. You give us a study to take a look at, and encourage us to go out and search and find other studies that sit out there. But let's get into these changes or outcomes that you may have seen in patients who have used homeopathy as part of their care. So can you give us a few representative samples? Not necessarily, they don't have to be miracle stories, but just realistic ones about where you've seen homeopathy make a meaningful difference in your patients.
Okay, I will tell you one miracle case that is dear to my heart. My father was observed to have an aortic aneurysm. So they were going to go in and operate. Before surgery, it's common sometimes to give homeopathic arnica. Arnica is used for injuries. Great to have on hand if you get a concussion, but because basically it stops bleeding and circulates the blood, so there's less clotting. So anyways, it's very common to give before surgery, and there's a lot of doctors now who do give that, especially those who work with dermatologists and things like that. They'll give a little bit of homeopathy. I gave my father one dose, 3 tiny pills. Well, the next day they went in to operate, and they saw it had ruptured. Okay, and most people die from that, but they couldn't understand why it had stopped bleeding. So they saved his life. I know the homeopathy saved the life, and the nurses knew that too, and I told them about it. So that's a classic thing to have on hand. When I had my son, arnica was handy for bruises, any kind of slip or fall or anything, or aches and pains, working out at the gym. Arnica can be part of that. And they put arnica cream out there. So if you put it on the bruise, it'll heal twice as fast. So that's one. I mentioned colds and flu and COVID. I saw that everywhere. There's a remedy that's in the store now at Walgreens and other stores called oscillococcinum. Okay, it's a long name. Oscillococcinum. Cool, you get the idea. But there are 3 little vials, and they actually have mini pills. So you just pour the whole vial under your tongue. And that has worked on the flus, the H1N1. It's proven effective for almost any kind. And so my mother swears by it now. And it's a very effective remedy for cold and flu. The other thing is that jet lag and people who don't sleep. I've been working late and I'm tired. I don't get enough sleep. So I take the jet lag remedy called cocculus. Okay. I take a little bit of that and I don't even need coffee. I'm awake and energetic, not tired. But it works for jet lag. And then last but not least is a remedy called Nux vomica, Nuxvomica. They sell this in 3 packs at the store because it's so effective at overeating, having too much wine. If you have a wine headache, gone. Okay, one more I'm going to tell you about. It's called Cali phosphoricum. They sell that in 3 packs as well. It's for the mind, tension, headaches associated with intellectual fatigue. All these have one use on it, although it has multiple uses. But if you're tired, it's as close as I can show you Cali phosphoricum. Cali is potassium phosphate. Okay. Fatigue, mental fatigue, it clears that out of your head. And my students would love that. So
I want to ask you, I know we're going to cover this, but I'm so excited to see now because I imagine you can see people over the internet. You can do sessions with people. Is that true?
telemedicine is what you mean.
Yes. Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay. Yeah. You can do that. So, because I have picking up a client who's a mid-20s female, advanced aggressive breast cancer, and I'm going to start working with her, but I'd like to get you involved in seeing her as well because I'm sure you have something really great to offer. So that I just wanted to bring that up, and hopefully we can communicate afterwards.
Yeah, a lot of these practitioners will see people at a distance because it's the interview, the question taking that helps determine. If you look at the book of the remedies, they call it a repertoire, and then you figure out what remedies, they narrow it down and have similar symptoms, and they narrow it down to the right one. So they'll zero in on a few clues that help to pick which remedy is the right one.
Do you typically only use one remedy for a whole human being with a variety of symptoms? You typically just use one remedy, or do you combine remedies?
So this is a bit of a controversy because the old way is to look at the one remedy and then change it as the person changes. Now there's something called complex formulas where they will put a few of them together to enhance, usually for acute conditions. Constitutionally, still chase the one remedy that is right for you at the right time. But for many things like cold and flu, digestion, you'll see in the store they have these formulas of these put together. And that way, here's the thing, if you take the wrong formula, it won't really cause any problems. But the right one will get in there and change things. So sometimes they put that together.
So, Catherine, when patients come into your clinic, when do you decide whether homeopathy is the right approach for them, or you should choose another tool, or is homeopathy always the right tool?
Almost anything can be treated by either medicine, Asian medicine or homeopathy. And sometimes when patients are on pharmaceutical drugs, you really don't want to give them herbs because that will conflict. So an acupuncturist might say, let's use homeopathy as well. It depends. Again, over-the-counter use is very recommended as you can find the right one and you can zero in. And if you need more help, we also are there. You can just pop in and we can tell you which acute care remedy to use. And if you have a little more time and money to spend digging deeper, we can really bring you up to the next level with homeopathy. And the same thing happens with other medicines like Asian medicine and even Western medicine. And to use them all together, why not? It works.
So what's the right mindset in terms of just general mindset? What do you want the patients to have? Another way of phrasing this could be: is there anything that makes people more receptive to homeopathy? Is there any type of mindset you want to see them coming into it as they try it?
Well, first of all, just being open minded so you can enjoy the experience and just see what happens. You want to observe what happens in your body. And keep in mind, anything can be a placebo, including a drink of alcohol. Okay, just so you know. So you don't want to, that placebo effect is misleading. What you
Yeah,
want to
but
do
I
is,
also, a brief interruption. I think, but placebo effect. Bob and I have often talked about this. Placebo effect can be a
can
good
be a
thing. They've
healing
been
thing
so
as well.
right. That's right.
I don't
Or
believe people can heal without a placebo component.
yeah, it's
I
helpful.
don't believe, because if people don't have a placebo component, like the will to get better, then they're blocking the healing, and
Yeah,
that's the
blocking
problem.
can block anything if you have a
Yeah.
resistance to it. But keep in mind, animals and children, babies respond in different ways. I used homeopathy with my son, and you get the right remedy, symptoms stop like that. And so you can actually wait and see if it works within minutes if you start to feel better and notice a difference. Especially with some of that the barking cough, that was going around. There's a remedy for that specifically, that type of cough. So when you get those little books in the store, there's one that you can look and see all the ones they would recommend for coughs. And then they start asking, what kind of cough? Does it feel dry? Is it tickle in the throat? Is it better inside or outside, hot or cold? So those are questions that help define the remedy. So just be open. This medicine's been around for a long time and it works. But if it doesn't work, it might be because it's the wrong remedy that's chosen.
Now, before we go on to something else, you just said something there that really opened my eyes a little bit. You've often talked about in the Chinese medicine about whether is it wet, is it dry, is it hot? And to a lot of the Western mind, that says, oh, fairy dust. But you just pointed out something that we all should relate to is when it comes to coughs, even your MDs and people will look at a cough will ask you, do you have a dry cough? Do you have a wet cough? Is
Yes.
it accompanied by this or accompanied by that? So even so, I just encourage our listeners, if they have the Western mindset more, to think about, hey, there's could be some to this wet, dry, and other types of things. But
It's physics. It's physics. And how can you ignore physics when it has an impact on you? Your body, heat rises, a cold creates condensation, diarrhea, runny nose, dry skin, the weather that moves in can affect you and that dampness gets in. So it's physics in your body, essentially.
But then we started off with that question about mindset. So just to bring it back to that before we move on. So basically, you're saying for the patients coming in from a mindset standpoint, you just want them to be open and not resistant, and you want them to have some awareness to enjoy the path and dig into what their body is saying to them and tells them as they experience it.
Yeah, they have to become somewhat introspective, attuned to your body, but also your emotions. There's a great remedy for grief that gets stuck. It's called ignatia. And so my two remedies that I use when I come across someone who had a death in the family or a breakup, gelsemium for the shock, because then they feel lethargic and like the flu. And then ignatia later when they're trying to heal, but it's stuck and it just kind of opens things up. And they feel physically what that emotion does to their body, and they notice the difference when they take that remedy.
Nice.
Well, in our next segment, we're going to talk about what motivates patients. And before we get to that, I wanted to talk about a recent survey that indicated that 75% of the nation is in some kind of chronic dehydration. And so that's why I'm excited to talk to you about BioLite. So if 75% of the nation is experiencing dehydration, it's probably 90% here in the state of Arizona, although we have had a lot of rain recently. But BioLite is the only medical grade hydration drink out there. Everything that you would get in an intravenous IV, but in the convenient drink. It's 650% more electrolytes than the leading sports drinks. And BioLite is family owned, and they're on a mission to help everyone feel better fast. So BioLite's amazing. I wish I would have had it when I was competing in athletics or running marathons. I really could have used this. So I use it myself. So getting on to what's motivating patients, and it might have something to do with going the traditional route and not getting the time that you think you should with a provider, right? Because it's 5 minutes, 15 minutes max. So do people feel unseen or rushed through an appointment? Not feeling their needs. Is that why you see patients come to you?
Well, that can be it. Usually it's because they don't get results from what they're using before. And they hear there's a little bit of hope where they might get relief from these medicines. And so uh, that's a lot of it. And then the time that someone spends with you, listening and knowing that they have a solution that we should try, it's so healing. That alone is healing. Because many times in Western medicine, their symptoms are negated or ignored. Their feelings, for sure. Very few doctors, unless you're a therapist, are going to listen to your feelings. And they're tied together with these medicines. These are mind body medicine.
Now, Bob, I thought you'd jump in there, and you're always talking about this mind body stuff. So why is mind body medicine such a great thing, Bob? Come on.
So, first of all, the way I refer to it is mind brain body connection. Mind is really the main control center. It directs the brain what to do from the sympathetic nervous system, and then you've got the body, the response to the brain and the mind. So for me, it's the mind brain body connection. And I mean, homeopathy. So first of all, I know so many people who have struggled with conditions, and they finally comes to, okay, I'll try this, and they tried it and it just worked, and it worked so quickly. So, and also I think we get a little bit hung up on like versus like. That's a key way to explain it. But yet, when you've got a human being that's got a whole variety of abilities that Catherine would be utilizing. And every human being is different in that regard. So that's why it's a personalized approach. So, and when you ask people about their thoughts and their feelings and their philosophy and their belief systems, that's all mind, brain, body connected. It's all, and the body's responding to all of that. So I love the I don't know that much about homeopathy, but I've always been a big fan of it as a part of a multimodal approach to solving chronic conditions.
Yeah, and so as I reflect a little bit, we start out some of this discussion on the fact that it's a $16 billion market worldwide on this, and growing in the U.S. is part of that. And I think, Catherine, what you've kind of, I think, brought to light a little bit, regardless, I'm still a little bit of a skeptic here. So regardless of whether or not this is a beautiful system that works, I'm going to look at that research and dive some more into it. But regardless of that, it's kind of what you brought out is that it reflects what's going on in the healthcare system here a little bit, where there are chronic, acute things that could be addressed differently, chronic things that aren't being healed, that are really being managed by, and sometimes managed quite well by pharmaceuticals, but those have side effects. And that time with people and understanding people that says, with this approach, where people are digging in, personalizing it, spending time with the patient, that it's filling a number of gaps out there that's kind of driving that.
Speaking of those gaps, though, Catherine, what do you think really is the one main contributor you think that the $16 billion market is still growing? Is it the outcomes, or is it really those gaps that Tim talked about?
Well, it's both. It's both the outcomes. And I don't want to completely shoot down pharmaceutical drugs because they can be very effective and very powerful. However, they haven't really cornered the market on chronic disease and a lot of the self-help stuff. It's a different level, pharmaceutical drugs. And some of those medicines can have side effects. Homeopathic remedies generally don't have side effects. Now, if you're well and you start taking these remedies, you might notice something that's not right because you don't want to take it unless you really need the symptom. But it's relatively safe. We've had kids ingest them thinking it's like candy, and they really don't get sick.
I just thought of one more question. Is it possible that if you're putting homeopathic remedies together, that they can counteract each other?
It's possible. The biggest counteraction is coffee, because drinking your cup of coffee negates some of the effects of those remedies. So you can learn about it. On a lot of these books that are out there, here's the one I got, Homeopathy for Children and Pregnancy. So it's very helpful for teething and so forth. Tim, I know you're a dog with a bone, so I found something for you here. Okay, these remedies, they have single remedies. And here's an example. Bryonia is muscle and joint pain improved by rest. Delcamara is a joint with dampness. Okay, and that works for coughs as well. Ruse Tox, classic, if they improved motion. And then they have combination tablets with all of those combined and cream. So just letting you know, there's help for you out there.
Yeah, well, now, but Catherine, my real thing there, and it just comes a little bit maybe from still that lack of knowledge, and you touched upon it, and I think Bob touched upon it. I take Boss Willie, and that helps. But I'm just wondering, is that homeopathic or is that herbal medicine?
Okay, that's
And
herbal because it's
right,
not
so
diluted. It's not a
right,
nano substance.
okay.
Okay,
So
so a
what?
lot of the
Go
same
ahead.
herbs, because we can have that as a homeopathic substance as well. Okay, but it's
Okay.
the delivery. Are you delivering at the nanoparticle level, or are you delivering at an herbal hardcore level like that? There's different ways to talk to the body. You can balance it with herbs, or you can go to the communication system.
Are we going to list some of these resources, these books that Catherine's talking about in the show notes?
I can provide that for you, and but if you go to the store, there's stuff there as well. The homeopathic section usually gives a little bit of information as well, but there's much more online. And if you like it, study it. With any of these medicines, the more we can inform ourselves, we can take care of our families and ourselves because our symptoms change too. So one remedy is not going to take care of everything.
Great point.
And you want to build your medicine cabinet to have things at home.
And it's not expensive to do
It's
that,
not
really.
that too expensive.
Yeah.
$7 to $10 for a little remedy, and that lasts for a bit.
Well, one of the reasons that I've been involved in putting these clinical solutions into community pharmacies is to fill the care gaps that are out there with our current health system, right? And so do you think that homeopathy, that boom in homeopathy, says more about homeopathy, or is it filling those care gaps like I'm trying to accomplish?
Well, it's been around, but it's being marketed in stores, and people are practitioners out there and they hear about it. So, but the vast public isn't quite aware because it's not been so mainstream as it used to be. But even then, way back when, I'm not sure if they had stores selling whole collections of those. They would go to the counter and talk to the pharmacist and tell them what they have. They'd just hand them something. So it's a little bit different nowadays. There's things that are sold over the counter and they're FDA approved, which says something right there. And then there's a whole pharmacopoeia of more distinct, different remedies that you have to see a practitioner for to really get an understanding of what fits you. So if you want to learn about it, it's great. But there's books, there's stuff online there. You can try the remedies and see how they distinguish this one for this type of arthritis versus this one.
So you've given us a little bit there as we go into this kind of wrap up section here, but a little bit more on those portions. As with anything, there's a lot of good information, bad information out there, great practitioners, mediocre practitioners, scam practitioners. In addition to some of the research you point out to us, how can someone navigate, navigate this world?
Yes. Well, there are training institutions that can certify practitioners taking at least 3 years of training in this. Okay, and that's for the constitutional side. If you take about 100, 150 hours, you can become even good at the acute situation. Okay, the 3 year ones include that. But if you don't want to do the 3 year training, definitely consider taking a 30, 50, or 150-hour course. And if you're a practitioner, you can add that on to understand how to integrate that in your practice as well.
Now, do you offer that course as part of at your institute? Okay. And then how can consumers interact and learn in your environment?
Thing because we have little mini courses, 30 hours, but there's books as well. And just start looking at what these things have to say, the marketing material for the remedies, but look online. There's so much information now that it's available because of online. And when you see there's something for allergies that could get rid of allergies, like, well,
The reason I love the concept of homeopathy is because it can really be self-directed.
yes.
People can do it on their own. So as long as they can read simple English, they can do it on their own, and then go get some help. Work with yourself for a while, and get some help from an expert who's more seasoned at it to see if you're on the right path, the path you've chosen. Get some adjustments to your path. So that's what I love about it. I love when people can, because we heal ourselves anyway. Everybody heals themselves, even as me as a practitioner. When I'm helping all kinds of clients, they're healing themselves with my guidance. It seems to be a right guidance, not the right guidance, but a right kind of guidance. And homeopathy can fit in so well with it.
Yeah, you can't have a doctor
Catherine,
follow you around at home, right? It doesn't make sense. So if you have some of these things and you take a few doses, it either works or it doesn't, and it's not going to hurt you.
Perfect.
yeah. So Catherine, for our listeners, why don't you give us just some really basic symptoms that someone would address with homeopathy?
Okay, well,
Someone listening today, they're experiencing something, and it could be a result that would be a positive outcome if they would follow your examples.
if you have a crying, teething baby, the chamomile remedy, the homeopathic remedy, could help make a difference in your life as well as the baby's. Helping to sleep, cough, colds, and flus, hop stuff.
Okay.
And there's that. Pain is another one, digestion, sleep, women's issues, hemorrhoids, quitting smoking, all kinds of stuff.
I appreciate that.
So people conventionally oriented, following some MD advice, but saying they're still not making the progress they want to, and they say, "Look, I'm got that mindset you want. I'm open to other things." Is there danger in combining our the homeopathy with the conventional approach, or if there is, how should they manage it? How should they approach it?
I think there's less danger combining with Western medicine and drugs when you use homeopathy than if you use herbs. Herbs have a stronger superficial effect that could counteract pharmaceutical drugs. But I rarely see any kind of interaction with homeopathy. It's just operating at a different level. It's on the level where you're thinking, for example, and it creates a chemical, or just it's so tiny versus most pharmaceutical drugs are on the herbal level, on the superficial and dealing with that. So homeopathy is a little bit different.
Are there any specific qualifications that someone should look in at for a practitioner?
Yeah. Well, someone who is certified in this medicine, 3 years of training, has a deeper understanding of the acute and the constitutional. However, a practitioner, let's say a naturopath or some other an acupuncturist or a Western doctor who's taken at least a couple hundred hours versus 3 years, can still have enough understanding. And any layperson, parent, mother, anybody can take that kind of training as well, because you're dealing with the acute remedies and just trying to understand that. Then it becomes the skill of the practitioner in being able to hear, think, and understand and put two and two together and find the right remedy. And so this is where you start to trust the person who's doing it. Do you like them? Do they trust them? Are they understanding you? And are they getting results? Then you know.
Thank you for that. So before we wrap up and close this episode, want to thank our sponsors again, BioLite and also Brain IQ. Did you know that you can lose weight naturally without all the hassle of a painful injection? Well, introducing Brain IQ Fast Melts, the revolutionary way to shed pounds easily. Tim.
Then before we wrap up, you've been so humble, Catherine. We've alluded to you teaching, we've alluded to your clinic, we've alluded to your school, but you didn't mention your school or give any people their website or anything or a way of contacting you.
Okay.
So
Well, we have two schools. We have the Acupuncture College is PIHMA, Phoenix Institute of Herbal Medicine and Acupuncture, PIHMA.edu. And the Homeopathic College, American Medical College of Homeopathy. It's been around in the United States for almost 30 years as well. And I hope to see you. I'd love to get to meet you personally. And if not, I hope you can learn wherever you are from us or anybody. There are many good training programs out there.
Well, thank you so much, Catherine, for coming on and being our guest again today. It's
Thank
great to
you.
see
I
you
enjoy
again.
doing this kind of thing and talking.
That's great information. And for our listeners, if you found this conversation valuable, subscribe to the Wellness Wave Club on YouTube. Also, join the Facebook community. And we have all kinds of wonderful resources there for you as well. It's our goal to help in any way we can and bring enlightenment of all the different solutions that could be available to you. And so thank you very much again, Catherine, for being
Thank you.
here.
Thank
You know,
you.
at the start, we were asking about this being a very controversial topic, but it seems pretty straightforward. It seems like it's pretty easy to adopt some of these practices. Not a lot of risk associated with it. You can ask Dr. Bob about some of the risks of commonly prescribed medication that have a lot more side effects than what you would get with a microdosing, of course. So
Yeah.
thank you for the conversation and for the clarification on everything today of this topic, and look forward to learning more. I definitely have to have you back. We can get into more of the details. Anything in closing, Tim, Dr. Bob?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you,
Thank you.
Catherine.
Thank you.
Your body of knowledge is fantastic, and the way you make a complex system of homeopathy quite simple for people to understand. So I
Um,
appreciate that very
and
much.
whether you're a skeptic or just curious, we invite you to learn more. And always remember, wellness, it's in you.